One of the most common questions that homeschool parents ask each other is, what kind of homeschooler are you? Today, let's talk about some of the different types of homeschooling philosophies. Now, there are many types, and the one that I'm going to talk about today are just a few of them. And what they actually look like is really going to vary from person to person. You might take a dozen people who all fall under the same philosophy and have completely different looking homeschools. If you are interested in some of the different types, let's explore. Before I jump into it, I'd love to know, what do you see yourself as? How do you label yourself? Or do you label yourself? Leave us a comment. Number one, school at home. And this is what it sounds like. You kind of recreate a typical school day in your home. People who do school at home typically buy a boxed curriculum. Everything's in there, put together for you. Your day will look like a typical school day. And the next one would be unit studies. Unit studies also, they go by many names. You might hear delight-directed learning, interest-led learning, child-led learning. You and your student together will pick different topics that you want to study through the year. And all of your subjects will fit inside of it. So if you want to learn about civil rights movement, your writing will be about that. Your history will be about that civil rights era. Your science might be exploring inventions during that time, or inventions that were created by African Americans. Unit studies might last you a couple of weeks. They might last you a couple of months. It's going to vary. This one you might hear about from books like Well-Trained Mind and Susan Wise Bauer. She is the one who wrote Story of the World, popular history curriculum. In the classical model, kids are divided into 3 levels. The grammar stage, which is basically your elementary. And in that stage, kids are learning how to learn. In the logic stage, which is roughly middle school, 5th or 6th grade through 8th grade, students are learning how to reason and how to think. And then in the rhetoric stage, high school, students are learning how to apply the rules of reasoning and logic. What this looks like in a day may look pretty similar to a school at home. There'll be an emphasis on writing, in quality literature, and in discussion. Waldorf is another one. This one dates back to Rudolf Steiner in early 1900s, and the emphasis here is on creating a well-rounded child, meaning that not only are you studying the typical subjects, but there's also an emphasis on things that I would call beautiful. Music, art, handiwork, crafts. Technology is held off until high school, typically, and it'll look a lot like you and your child learning together, doing the art together and the cooking together and all of it together. Charlotte Mason is another one that I would put into the category of looking beautiful. To me, Waldorf and Charlotte Mason look visually beautiful and calming. There's an emphasis on living books, especially in the elementary ages. Habit forming, narration, lessons are short, 15-20 minutes typically for the younger kids. And the approach that I think most people fall into is the relaxed or eclectical approach. Some people separate these two out, some people combine these two ideas, but basically you're picking and choosing what works for you and for your kiddos, and you're going with it. It's typically going to look like less packaged curriculum, full sets, and more like you choose one thing for phonics and one thing for spelling, something else for language arts, something else for math. It's not school at home, but for some families it may look similar to a school at home type of day. For other families, it may mean that you're only touching on a couple of subjects each day and taking a more child-led or interest-led learning, free learning the rest of the day. And the last one is unschooling. And in this one, the idea is that children learn just as part of living life. It's a very child-directed, interest-led learning. A common misconception with this one is that it's hands-off for parents, and that is definitely not true. In my experience, they're some of the most hands-on because they are so invested in helping their children carry through with things that they want to learn. But the distinguishing feature is that your students typically aren't learning out of curriculum. So learning to read comes from sitting with their parents reading books. Math comes from exploring life. And as they get older and find things like quadratic equations typically in your day, then you might be adding in more curriculum. History might come from lots of book reading or documentaries or such. Again, with each subject, they are learning that subject from living their life. So what type of homeschooler are you? Well, we are definitely an eclectic. We lean a little bit classical, a little bit school at home-ish, fairly traditional, but in an adaptable way for each of our kiddos. Let us know what you are down below. See you in the next video.
Homeschool Panda, created by homeschoolers for homeschoolers.